In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not
What happened with the Cubs?
The T-ball team?
Yes.
We did great.
Did they win today?
We don't keep score. So no, but no, they did great. A lot of them hit the ball. I pitched to them. A lot of them hit it. One girl freaking scream cries the entire time. So she scream cried the whole time. But, other than that, I think it was fine.
They had fun? The kids had fun?
Yeah.
Okay.
The kids had fun. They had a good time. And then Florence had a game after, and she did really well. She got a hit. I think they tied.
Nice.
So it was good.
Nice.
Yeah, now we're home. It's a disaster. Juan's in New York. So
What's he doing in New York?
visiting friends.
Nice.
Just
Okay.
doing like a dude trip.
That's fun.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to put the kids down and bust out the wine, or what's the game plan?
I hope so. We are painting. So I'm painting I took everything out of my closet and I'm painting the whole inside of my closet. And should we go cameras off? Because your parents' internet is terrible.
Yeah, God, I'm sorry.
I can't tell, everything's slow. Hopefully that's better.
Okay, let's try that.
Yeah. So we are painting like a hallway and the doors and the whole inside of the closet. So it's like a lot of work, but it's good because everything's a mess because I take everything out of the closets.
Nice.
So we're having a good time. We're gonna go get sushi after this. We're gonna get like one sushi roll and then like a bunch of edamame and some rice. That's how
Wait.
we do sushi. The three of us.
Joshua Tree Sushi.
It's good. So here's the thing. All sushi has to be frozen before it gets to the restaurant in the United States anyway.
Okay, so
So-
being proximity to an ocean doesn't actually impact anything.
It does not, no.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I
That sounds
didn't go
like a really
I didn't
fun
go
day.
until I learned that, but once I did learn that, I was like, oh,
Okay, so
I'm gonna go.
so I'm not crazy. Like this was a
No.
shared sentiment.
No.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Not crazy.
Cool. Well, should we kick things off?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we discuss two relationships that were red flaggy and doomed to fail, one historic, one true crime. I'm Farz, joined here by Taylor. Hi, Taylor. And okay, so hold on. I think I know this time. This time you go first.
I do.
Got it.
Whoop, whoop.
For a change. Okay, so we'll go ahead and discuss our drinks. I guess I'm going to go first. So this is going to be a bit of a flashback to last week because it's also going to include Guinness and
Ooh.
it's also going to include Sambuca. So it's Sambuca poured into a pint glass, followed by super, super slow pour of Guinness down the side, like it trickles down the side, so that the Sambuca floats on the Guinness at the end of all this. There's a
Is
name
that real?
for it.
Is that a-
It's real. It's
Yeah.
real. There's a name for it, but if I told you the name, you would know what I'm doing. So I'm not going to tell you the name
Oh
yet.
my
I'll
God.
tell you the name when I get to my story, okay?
Okay, that's exciting. I like Sambuca. I like like a aperitif
Hey, I remember
after a meal,
vaguely. I remember vaguely a thing where don't you like light Sambuca and then do a helicopter thing and then shoot it? Is that a thing?
I don't know. What's the helicopter thing?
Because
Like
you
you-
light, you light the Sambuca on fire, then you put your hand on top of the fire, on top of the shot glass, and then that extinguishes the fire, and then the glass adheres to you because of the vacuum it creates to your hand, so you can lift the whole thing up on the palm of your hand, and then you're supposed to like wave it around your head to show that it's like really adhering, and then you take it off and then shoot it.
I think you need to do a lot of research before you try that.
You know
Make
what?
sure
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
real
yeah,
before you
yeah,
give that a shot.
yeah.
'Cause that sounds very dangerous.
I might have to edit that out. We cannot take on liability right now.
Yeah, no, I don't recommend that. I mean, even if it's something that people can do, I'm going to say don't do it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, we'll do some research and get back to you on this.
Amazing. Well, okay, well, next time we're together, let's definitely figure out how to do that.
Oh yeah.
How do we do that? We figure Guinness tap? Okay, we'll figure it out. Cool. That sounds weirdly delicious and semi-dangerous. Okay, so I go first, and I'm going to do an old-timey story. And I'm drinking Beck's, the German beer, because have you seen Beer Fest?
Oh my God. I love Beer Fest.
So remember when they're like trying to name German beers and they're like und Beck's. Do you remember that part?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think about that all the time. So that's why if I'm like, what's a German beer? I'm like, und Beck's. So hard to find. So I can't wait. So we're in Germany. Chicken Becks.
My favorite part of that movie was when the Indian guy, when they're done drinking that first night, he wakes
Uh-huh.
up and he's cuddling a dead deer, just like covered in blood.
Yes.
So
And he's like,
good.
not
I need to.
again.
I did, yeah, yeah, he did. Oh, it's so good.
I love how that one guy dies and then his twin comes and you forget that he's dead.
I know. Incredible.
Landfill. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh my gosh, they did. So they're so hit or miss. Broken Lizard, that troop. Like we watched the Tacoma FD show where they're like in the fire department is great. We watched that. But then like they have a new one called Quasi about Quasimodo and it's like so bad I barely watched it. Like it
Well,
was a struggle
I
to
think
get
our
through it.
taste, I think our taste also changes a little
I
bit.
guess, I guess, but I feel like I like I didn't like Slam and Salmon, but I like Club Dread, and I like Puddle Cruiser. Anyway, and I saw them live, and it wasn't very good, and that was like 15 years ago. It was
Super
weird.
Trooper, Super
Yeah.
Trooper. How
Oh,
incredible. Ah,
Super Trooper 2 is another one that's better than the first one. Okay. Anyway, Rick and Bex.
okay.
Also, I'll do a little more another throwback to Beer Fest in a minute. So so I was thinking last week it was super cute that you think the Black Dahlia is out of scope because we have no scope. So you could definitely have done that if you had wanted to. You can definitely do it in the future. And I also think it's cute that you think she was found under the Hollywood sign because she was not. So I just wanted to make that clear that like I knew that you were wrong. I didn't say anything in case anybody else also knew you were wrong.
Wait, she was, well, it was in the mountains though, or whatever
No,
you
it was in
call
a
that.
park about 30 minutes away. No, it was like in the city.
Oh my God. Okay.
It was not in the mountains.
I'm so sorry, listeners.
Yeah, people were screaming in the cars across America and the world.
If I cause any road rage accidents, please forgive me.
So, okay. So that reminds, so I'll say that for you. You can do the Black Dahlia later if you want to. I do think there's something about a redhead cop in there that she may have had a relationship with that you could explore. So I think that could be in this. But that reminded me of my favorite murder, which is the Hinterkaifeck murders. Have you heard of those?
Oh, okay, and you said Bex is, oh my
Yes.
God, this is the creepy one, right? This is a super
Yes.
scare. Oh,
It's super
okay.
scary, which is why it's
Yes.
my favorite. Yeah.
Let's
So
do it. Love it.
okay, awesome. So it has, and there are some relationships in it, some like pretty bad ones. So I think they all kind of attributed to what happened. So the sound bites are what make it so fascinating. Like I'll go a little bit more into detail in like later, but first let me just tell you the creepy part. So on April 4th, 1922, after a few days of no one seeing the owners of Hinterkaifeck, which is a farm, a neighbor went over to investigate. In the barn, he found four bodies stacked in the hay. They were the bodies of Andreas Gruber, 63, his wife, Celia Gruber, 72, their daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35, and her daughter, Cecilia Gabriel, 7. They had been lured and attacked one by one. They'd be killed by a pickaxe, so like a big axe, like a flat side and a pointy side, and in the head. Little Cecilia, the 7-year-old girl, when they found her body, a lot of her hair had been pulled out. So the police think that she was laying there, dying for several hours, pulling out her hair like in agony and confusion. So, oh my
So
God, poor
bad.
baby. Inside the house were the bodies of the maid, Maria Baumgartner, she was 44, and the baby Joseph, who was 2. They had been dead since March 31st, so for about 5 days. It had taken a while for the town to notice because the fire was on and the animals were fed. Someone was living in the farm. So it looked like someone was living there. Like the animals weren't crying, they were well fed. The dogs weren't barking, they were taken care of. The fires were on. So that people thought someone was there. So someone had been living there like with the dead bodies for several days after.
So creepy.
Prior to, it's so creepy. Prior to the murders, the former maid, so it was actually Maria Baumgartner's first day, which is like the worst first day of work ever is the day you get murdered on the job. But
Yeah.
it was her first day, poor thing. The former maid had quit because she had heard footsteps in the attic and she thought that the house was haunted. So she was like, I'm out of here. So also like Andreas, the dad is a jerk. So that could have contributed it as well. But she said that she heard noises in the attic and it scared her enough that she left. Andreas, the dad, he also told people in town that he saw footprints in the snow going into one of the barns where the door had been broken, but none leaving.
Yo,
So,
yeah, yeah, that's part I remember. Yeah.
you know, so everything I read was like dramatically different facts about this. So I just like picked my favorite because like I don't know. But one thing did say that there were two sets of footprints in the snow, which would like change who we think it might be. But there was definitely one set of footprints in the snow leading towards one of the buildings, but none leading out. So that's scary.
Yeah, yeah. It actually, so Taylor, like it reminds me of so there was we had one of those in the U.S. too, if you remember. Like it was this family that went into this cabin. I want to say it was somewhere in California, and there
Hmm.
was like separate cabins, and everybody was dead. It was like
Oh,
nobody knows how it happened, and there was like footprints, and it was the exact same story except like
oh my God.
in the U.S. Whatever. I'm sidetracking your story, but like it
No,
is freaky.
totally. It's so scary. It's so scary. Andreas had also told people in town that he found a newspaper from Munich on his property. Munich is about 40 miles away from Hinterkaifeck, and he didn't subscribe to this newspaper. Nobody in town had brought one in. So there was like a newspaper that he could not identify that he found on his property. So like, that was weird. You know,
Yeah.
gotta break it from. After the murders, cigarettes were found in the attic, as well as the attic had like a trap door, like a false floor with like a little compartment in it, and that's eventually where the murder weapon was found. It was like they found the bloody axe in the attic underneath the floorboards. So whoever it was definitely went back up to the attic and hid it in there. So like that's the scary story. Someone living in my attic is like the scariest fucking thing I could possibly think of.
It's like Parasite.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so freaking scary. Like I feel like there's been like dozens of like Lifetime movies and stories of just like, someone's like watching you through the vents or, just like having someone up there. And also like funny that like it's like 1922, so it must have been so smoky that you wouldn't notice someone smoking in your attic. You just
Yeah.
like kind of let it go. But yeah, it's so scary. Like the footprints are so scary. The idea that like they killed the baby, they lived in the house with the dead bodies. Like they cleaned up after themselves. They took care of it like they were living there, and then they
Uh,
left.
Taylor, have you seen The Open House on Netflix?
Is it with Jen? Yes. Yes, I think so.
That's just
Where they're
that's
like
the story.
look in the basement or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like
They
so
just like
somebody
never
was like
left.
living there and nobody knew. I mean, that was fictional. It's
Oh.
scarier that it's real, but whatever, same story concept.
It's so scary. And I feel like I've also seen things in like New York City where like somebody had someone living in like his crawl space, like in his apartment, and she would like come out at night and like pee in the sink.
So
I'm
wild.
laughing. It's so wild. Okay, so that's like the gist of it. That's what makes it so fascinating to me. I think the whole thing is like so scary, but I want to go look to a little bit more into detail. So I went to Wikipedia, of course. There's a hinterkaifeck.net. I watched an episode of Lore. So Lore is a podcast, and they have two seasons of show on Amazon where they like act out the stories. I think like they're all really different because they're all different stories. But in the one about Hinterkaifeck, the dad Andreas is played by the grandpapa from Beer Fest.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's best. I love when he goes, "What is it, grandpapa?"
That guy also played Arnold Schwarzenegger in an Arnold Schwarzenegger made-for-TV movie.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
Right?
He was in like a bunch of like he was in the original Dune. Like he's like a very famous actor. Like I'm giving
Yeah.
him no justice, but yes.
Yep. Yep.
Like I'm like, oh, the grandpa from Beer Fest, but you know what I mean. He's in this lore. The woman who played the maid in that episode of Lore is in Dark. Did you ever watch Dark? It was also really good. It's in German. It's
No.
on Netflix. It's like really creepy and good. So anyway, some good German actors. I listened to a podcast, The Midnight Train, but I also read the book, The Man from the Train, which will come in later. So I read that a long time ago, but it kind of ties back to this. So I'm going to kind of go through it again, but a little bit more in detail. So Hinterkaifeck was a farm behind the town of Kaifeck in Germany. Hinter means behind, so just like near Kaifeck, Hinterkaifeck. It was 43 miles north of Munich. It was built around 1863. It had several buildings. It wasn't just like the house. There was a main house, which had a basement for like food storage, and then that attic, a stable, a barn, a machine house, a bakery slash laundry, a coach house, and a well. So it's also a time when like there's no indoor plumbing. So like your your kitchen is usually separate from the house, and your laundry is separate from the house, and it was a farm where like people could buy like milk from them. They could probably buy like meat from them, and they had like vegetables and stuff. So like a farming compound. On the lore show, they do a really good job of showing you just like it feels isolated and it's really fucking cold. It's like snowing, like everyone's freezing. They just have candles and like shawls. So really cold and really it felt very isolated, but it wasn't like super isolated. You could walk to town. There were some neighbors that were like pretty close, and it also was right by the train tracks. So you could also always hear the train going by. The Gruber family lived on the farm. So that's Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and then the two children. One source said that like Victoria was the owner of the farm, the 35-year-old with her husband, but I don't know where that came from. It could have been that Andreas owned the farm from his first wife's family because he was a widower and then married Cecilia. She was like 10 years older than him. So that could have be how he got it. But there's like a bunch of different stories about how they may have gotten it. Also, just for the record, Victoria, the daughter, she was married to a man named Carl Gabriel. He died in World War I in France and his body was never found. He is the father of Cecilia, the 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So the undisputable fact of the story is that Andreas was awful. He was like a bully and a jerk. He was awful to his family. The people in town didn't like him. He was abusive. And one thing to note is Joseph, the 2-year-old boy, was not the son of Victoria's husband, the one who died in the war. His parentage is in question. So in 1915, Andreas and Victoria, his daughter, were convicted of having an incestuous relationship between
Yikes.
1907 and 1910. Like it went to court. I don't know like how that works exactly, but he got a year in prison and she got a month in prison for that. So like he definitely had raped his daughter. Definitely abused her for a long
How
time. It was like
is
10 years before this, but he definitely did it.
how do you go? Why is it rape the punishment? Why is it incest?
Right? That's a good point. It wasn't like like they were accused of having an incestuous relationship, which feels like that makes it sound like she was cool with it. There's no way she was cool with it, you
Seems
know?
light. Seems light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point. He should be charged with like raping a family member. But there's also another person I think that Joseph might have been Joseph's father, the neighbor Lawrence Schlittenbauer. He was married to someone else, but he was having an affair with Victoria. Like everybody knew that they were having an affair. So he could have been Joseph's dad as well. So it could have been like either of those. They don't really know who his father was. But other than that, terrible thing is business as usual at the farm. The family kind of goes in and out of town. People see them all the time. They get their mail. They have coffee delivery on the way. There's someone coming to fix the tractor. So there's no indication that like anything bad's going to happen. I can also mention, the former maid quit. She said the house was haunted. The new maid, Maria Baumgartner, came with her sister on March 31st, 1922. Her sister stayed for a little bit and then left her sister there, and that she was the last person to see the family alive. In the middle of the night, somebody lured the family one by one into the barn and murdered them. So I feel like a bunch of
Okay.
time I read,
Okay. Sorry. Can you pause there real quick? Is that really what
yeah,
people think happened?
yes. So here they did some tests, like what can you hear from the house from the barn? Can you hear someone screaming and you couldn't. That they didn't think that happened. But in the lore show, which I think kind of might make sense, is like the dad went out first to like milk the cow or whatever. And then the person killed him, dropped his body in the barn, and then like let the cow out, you know? So everybody else would be like, oh shit, the cow's out. What the fuck is he doing? And then go and like bring the cow back and they end up in the barn, you know? So you could,
It just sounds very much like people walking down the basement steps in a
yeah.
horror movie.
Well, yeah, but also like what reference, like what would make them, I guess maybe because they were afraid that the house was haunted or whatever, or like someone was there, but like I don't know how actually scared they were of like something weird happening. But I also feel like you're so freaking tired. You worked on your farm all day. You have to like
Yeah, that's
get to
true.
bed. It's like late. So and it's snowing and like it's cold and you're just like, oh, the barn door's open again. Damn it. And you like, go out there and check it and then you like see a dead body and all of a sudden you're killed too, you know? So I don't think it'd be like that hard.
I guess that's true.
And it would make sense that the maid didn't go out because she wouldn't know to do that because it was her first day, and the baby obviously is a baby, so he would sit inside. Everybody
Right.
else went. I don't know. I think that checks out to me, but I don't know. No one knows. They left the bodies stacked like cordwood. It always says stacked like cordwood, which I only hear in this. They just like have them stacked like wood. They were stacked and under some hay. The murderer then went back into the house, killed Maria. It was her first freaking day. And then he killed the baby, which is terrible. He killed the baby in its little crib. And then they stayed for a few days. They fed the animals, made food, cleaned up. People weren't too worried because they saw the smoke. Then on April 1st, which is the next day, some coffee sellers named Hans and Edward arrived to take an order. They walked around, didn't see anyone. They saw the machine house was open, but the gate had been broken for a while, so they weren't like they knew that, and they just left. They didn't say anyone. Thought that was kind of weird. A man during this time, also a man named Michael happened to pass by. He said that he saw that the oven was on, he saw the smoke, and when he kind of walked by, he saw a person outside, and that person like pointed a lantern at him in a way that like he couldn't see who they were. And then he kind of like ran away because he was scared. So he saw someone, but he doesn't know who it was. You know what I
That's
mean?
also very creepy.
I know. This reminds me, well, a long time ago, Miles was just a baby. I was sitting on the couch in our LA apartment and I was like breastfeeding Miles, so I couldn't move. And Florence was there too, and Juan was in the kitchen, and someone tried to open our door. And I was like, Juan, oh my God. So Juan came running, and then like they had opened our neighbors or two, and they left, and it was this old couple. And I think they had found like a big ring of like mail keys like the postman would have and like tried to open up people's doors. But I was like, we were very clearly home. And they tried to open up our door. And then afterwards, like one and our neighbor that called the police, and the police were like, we found him. Let's see if you know who he is. So they took them to a place, and they just had the guy stand in front of the cop car, and they like shone the lights in his face, and he couldn't see them, but they could see him
Wait, they
to
couldn't
identify
see
him.
him?
Like they could see the man who tried to break into our house, but the man couldn't see Juan,
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
anyway,
But wait,
someone else.
y'all saw his face? Like y'all had you knew that that was the guy?
Yeah, we saw him through the keyhole. We were like very clearly home. It was really weird and scary.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then in the end, the police officers were like, "We're just gonna drive him to Hollywood and let him out, and hopefully he doesn't come back."
It's not good
Great job,
policing.
LAPD.
I know.
Perfect. Perfect response to that. Um, so someone else saw two people. No, there's some like suspicious things happening. So Cecilia, the little girl, was out of school for a couple days. Family didn't go to church on Sunday, so people started to like get suspicious. Like, where are they? We haven't seen them in a while. April 4th, a dude named Albert Hoffner came to repair an engine. Like he knew that he was supposed to go and like repair this machine in the machine house. He didn't see anyone there. Kind of walked around, knocked on the doors, was like, "What's going on?" He ended up going into the barn, not the barn, the machine house, like a different outbuilding, and spending 4 hours fixing the tractor or whatever it was. And while he was there, he said that when he got out of the barn, some things were different. Like someone had like kind of cleaned up a little bit after he had done that. So it sounds like the person or persons who was in the house left during the time that he was in the barn. Like he was in the machine house fixing the tractor. So
It's interesting.
he's
It's,
lucky.
it's interesting how
Yeah.
tidy this guy was.
I know. He just kept cleaning up for like the blood people.
I mean, he's a
Uh,
nice house guest, absent the killing part.
yeah, totally. Fed the animals, all the whole thing. It was possible that Albert's presence made the guy leave. Later in the day, the neighbor, Lawrence Schlittenbauer, who's possibly the dad of Joseph, sent his sons to see if anybody was there because he was like, it's weird to have an answer to the door. The kids came back and said, we can't find anybody. So Lawrence went back with some grown-ups, and thank God the kids didn't find the bodies. The grown-ups did. They found them in the barn and in the house. So they're the ones who were the first people to find them. The police are called, and then here are the list of suspects. And again, like we'll never know who actually did it, but here's what people think about it. Lorenz is a big suspect, obviously. He's possibly the father of Joseph. He 100% had an affair with Victoria. He also was super weird and did some like weird things. So when he got there, he like tried to move the bodies around to like see them better or something. So he just like touched all of the crime scene like a lot. During this time, you could use fingerprints. Like fingerprints were had been invented as like a way to solve crimes, but they didn't do it in this case for whatever reason. They didn't take fingerprints. He also like Lawrence had a alibi for the night of the murders, but I think he's pretty suspicious. Like he was the one who ended up finding the murder weapon in the attic, being like, "Oh, it's here. I just tripped over it." Like okay, kind of suspicious. And he also, because of the kid, like maybe was mad at Andreas for what he had done to Victoria. Maybe he didn't want to pay child support for Joseph. Like who knows? And he also like lived really close, so he could have definitely like had the like proximity to do it. But also because he lived so close, like he wouldn't really need to hang out there. So that I think is weird. And before he died in 1941. He did win a bunch of civil claims for slander against people who called him the murderer of Hinterkaifeck. So maybe he didn't do it. I don't
I
know.
also I
Um,
also don't
yeah,
want him to have done it because it's much scarier to think of someone who had no motivation, who just blew in from out of town and did that. That's
totally.
so much freakier than like, yeah, here's all the logical reasons why this guy would do it.
100%. That's definitely like way more scary. A couple other people, some people think that Carl Gabriel did not die in World War One, and he came back and he did it. So he got home to Hinterkaifeck, was like, huh, my wife has a son who's 2. I've been gone for 3 years, did some math, got super upset and killed everybody, and then just disappeared into the wind. So I mean, there's no evidence for that, but some people think that. There was another man who named Severin who was a former lover of Victoria's. I think he could have done it. There's a man named Peter Weber who was talking to a friend and saying, like, I've done some work at Hinterkaifeck. They have a lot of money. We should go back there and we should steal all their money and kill them, which is exactly the plot of In Cold Blood. Have you read that?
No, I have not read that, but I saw the movie Capote. Taylor, the
Fair.
universal answer to the question of have I read that is no. I've seen the movie versions
It's
of anything.
it's like, but I feel like if you're gonna read that book, you should read it in Cold Blood.
I know,
It's
I know.
it's so scary. I remember reading it and being like, I am so scared. I felt like in Friends when Joey put the book in the freezer, like I felt like I wanted to do that. Like I was like, this
Yeah,
is so scary.
I've heard that a
So and
lot. I've heard that a lot. But you are
it's
also
really
like
weird.
a super avid reader, and you had that
Yeah, yeah.
exact same reaction to that old lady scene in It when you read that and you threw your book.
I did throw. Thank you for remembering that. That was
There you
very
go.
specific. I did throw my book when I read the old lady scene in it because it was so scary. I
Yep.
was at a I was at a restaurant. Okay, so yes, so a lot of people could have done it. Everyone hated Andreas. There's a bunch of brothers people suspect. So there's like 2 brothers called the Gump brothers, and they think that they might have done it, but there's no really not a ton of evidence for them. There's a woman named Teresa in 1971. She said that when she was 12, her mother got visited by 2 brothers named Carl and Andreas, and she said that they had confessed to the mother in front of her when she was 12 that they did it, but that also feels really weird. I don't think that seems like very suspicious and that lady just wanted to get some attention. There's also another pair of brothers called the Bickler brothers and their friend Georg. They, repeatedly said they thought the family should be dead. So, you know, saying that out loud, you probably shouldn't do that. So they think that maybe they did it, the 3 of them did it together. But there's no proof to that. The only thing that is like maybe leans in that direction is like the family dog hated everyone except these guys for some reason. So they like knew the family. So the dog might have been calm when they came over and never barked when they were like sneaking around. So like that could have been it. And then also this is super weird. Maid, the original maid, she said in addition to hearing this footsteps in the attic, she used to talk to someone outside of her window and she thought it was one of these guys. And these guys were like, it wasn't us. What?
What?
I know.
That does not sound like somebody of sound mind, or it sounds like a complete liar, is what it sounds like.
I mean, like, could you imagine someone be like, "Hello, Farz, I'm hanging on the side of your window. Don't look at my face.
Yeah,
Just
I
assume
mean,
I'm someone else."
Taylor,
What?
if I heard your voice, it would scare the shit out of me.
Oh my God, I know. It'd be
Like
so
it's
scary.
what's going on, Taylor? Like what's happening? Like there's something going. Oh man,
Why are
that
you
sounds like one
outside
of
my
those like
window?
it's like one of those like Japanese horror movies, like the level, like multiple levels up scary.
Yeah, it's so scary. So like that is such a weird story. So like I don't know, maybe it was maybe it was them moving around, but just like I don't know why. I don't know. And also like who the fuck was the maid talking to? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Was it anyone? So that's terrifying. Other brothers, a lot of people that were like investigated, but no one was ever convicted. The last thing, and this is what I think you were talking about is like the actual scariest thing is maybe it was someone they didn't know. Maybe it's someone who just like stuck around and stayed in the attic for a little bit and then killed them and then left because they just wanted to kill people. This theory is in the book The Man from the Train, which I did read also, and it's about the man who did remember the Visalia axe murders?
No, it
I think
sounds
he
familiar,
might
but I don't remember it.
So I'm gonna see. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. It's the Villisca. So Vizilka axe murders. Those were on June 10th, 1912. So it was in Vizilka, Iowa. There were a family lived in this like farmhouse, and there were I think 6 people in the family, and then 2 little girls were just like spending the night having a sleepover, and they were all murdered with an axe. They were all of the mirrors in the house were covered when people finally found them, which is so scary. So all the mirrors were covered. All of the um all of the bodies were like kind of like just like scattered around the house. The guy definitely like masturbated over the bodies, particularly of the little girls. So it was like a real bad guy. But so that's like one of the scariest fucking stories. And so in this book, The Man from the Train, the author, Bill James, he talks about how there's a bunch of other crimes that are very, very similar to that one, and they all occur in like really close proximity to a train. As someone like going in and like murdering a family and leaving just because he like wants to murder people. I think this book was like okay, and I think it was great. I wish it had been better, but oh wait, this is other now Wikipedia says it was in 1897, so that can't be true. No, it was in 1912. Anyway, I feel like now there's just so much wrong information on the internet.
So much conflicting stuff. Like with my story, what I'm gonna go through, I'm like, you could fact check me on like 50 points here, and you're gonna pull different sources for all of them. So
I mean, maybe it's because I'm like researching things more than I ever have, but I'm like, what the hell? This doesn't make any
yeah,
sense. And I was like, yesterday I tried to ask Bard for facts because I was like, oh, I've never used Bard. Like, me just asking a question. And it was like very wrong, like totally wrong. And I was like, that's wrong. And it was like, I'm learning. And I was like, what? Why? It
don't
makes no sense.
don't trust Bard.
Ugh.
Yes.
But anyway, so in The Man from the Train, I think it was in 1912 when he killed that like family in Iowa that you can stay at that house also, BT Dubs. It's a like a bed and breakfast, which is terrible. So he would kill people, he wouldn't rob them. He just wanted to kill people. The scariest thing that happened in that book that I remember is that the one thing that the author says is like people were always like there was a really creaky step at that house. So like how could he have killed everybody upstairs and killed everybody downstairs without everybody hearing, you know? Like there's just like no way he could have like snuck around the house and killed people. Like we were saying with like the DeFeo murders, like you can't shoot everybody without anybody else waking up. But the author was like he didn't tiptoe up the stairs. He ran up the stairs and killed everybody, you know? He just like did it so fast that no one had time to react, which I think is terrifying and makes sense.
Yeah, so sure. I mean, you can see, but I think that we're over emphasizing like a creak on a stair is going to wake somebody up. Like if you have a family, if you have people in your house, we're going to be walking up and down the stairs. Like they want to go down and
That's
get
true.
like a cup of water. Like you're going to hear shit. It's like, yeah, that's the house settling. I hear shit all the time in my house, and it's somewhat terrifying sometimes.
Yes,
But I
probably.
don't.
You want to check your attic? Are you busy?
No,
Want to
Taylor.
check
One time, I might have told you this. One time, it was like the first night I moved into the new house, and Luna wasn't with me, which like is extra creepy because I don't know what happened in that house. Maybe somebody was killed there. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm in my room. I'm dead asleep, and I basically hear the girl from The Ring just screaming outside my bedroom window,
What?
and I'm like, "Whoa!" Like my every hair I have like stood up on end. It was the most terrible middle of the night, like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I told somebody about this like a few nights later. I was like, I heard this sound. It was the scariest thing I've ever heard. And then they played for me foxes howling on YouTube.
Oh.
Foxes have the most terrifying howl I've ever heard in my entire life. When we're done recording, when we're done all this stuff, go listen to it. If you ever hear that
Oh my God.
sound, you will literally think that like that woman is crawling out of your TV to come into your room and kill you, and
Mm.
it is just a fox. So, anyways,
I'm so
sorry.
glad they figured it out. No, I'm
Yeah,
so glad they figured it out. I'm also glad I didn't talk to you. Just like yelled. That's so scary. In college,
yeah.
one time, shampoo fell off my like thing into my bathtub in the middle of the night, and I've never been more scared in my life. It was like a huge bang, you know? I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Ugh. So this author thinks that the man from the train is a man named Paul Mueller. Paul Mueller was a German immigrant in America, and he was like a vagrant, on trains all the time. And there's like evidence that he was in the places where a lot of people were killed. So that's the person that he thinks it is. But Paul Mueller also disappears. The axe murders in America stop after like a certain amount of time. So he thinks that Paul Mueller went back to Germany and he did the Hinterkaifeck murders because the timing could technically work out because he was German, so he would like he could leave America, go back, blend into Germany, and he would obviously literally never be found, you know? So that's what the author of The Man from the Train thinks. I don't know. There was in 2007, 15 students at the police academy this is hilarious. Okay. So, and I took a lot of German, but the police academy is called Polizeifachhochschule, and the place that they are from is Fürstenfeldbruck. No, Fürstenfeldbruck, one word. First available book. Okay. So they examined the case using modern criminal techniques. They confirmed that they know who it is using the forensics and what they had and all these things, but they won't say who they think it is because they don't want his family to, in consideration of his descendants, which is super dumb.
That is, yeah,
Like, I would
that's
want to
really
know if my
gracious.
grandpa was the axe murderer. Give me a break. You have to tell people. So the Gruber family was buried in Weidhofen Cemetery. Near there, they were buried without their heads because their skulls had been sent to a psychic to try to identify the killer. That did not
I
work.
I
And
love old-timey medicine.
she said, I don't know why she needed their heads. She said that the murders had been committed by two people and that the murder weapon was still on the property, which was true because they actually didn't find the weapon until they were demolishing it. So that part was true. So maybe it was two people. I don't know, 50% right so far. The skulls were kept in the Justice Building in Augsburg, Germany, and they were destroyed by bombing during World War II. So
Wow.
womp womp, pretty terrible. In 1923, just a year later, Hinterkaifeck Farm was demolished, so you can't go there anymore. You can't visit it. It's kind of even not clear exactly where the buildings were, probably because people were going there and, being weird and creepy and trying to see what was up and scaring each other. So they demolished the whole thing and then, kind of folds into World War II and a bunch of other stuff happened. So it was all kind of ruined, but it's a mystery and it will be a mystery forever, which is exciting and it's so scary. Just the idea of a murder in your attic.
I think okay, so I'm going to be quoting Heath Ledger's The Joker in this. It
Mhm.
is the unpredictability of it that makes it terrifying. That's why the whole lack of
Yes.
motivation part is like, as a horror story, it is much better to have no motivation and just assume that there's some psycho out there who's just knocking on
I
doors,
know.
seeing what's open. I'm gonna go, but like also it makes you wonder why someone would do that anyways if they were living there for that long. Well, we don't know how long they were living there, but the earlier maid said that she thought the house was haunted, which like maybe it was, or it was this person, that
Right.
she was picking up on. So if you're just living comfortably there anyways, then who cares? Like just like what was the added
What was,
motivation in killing
yeah.
them other than
Yeah.
being crazy?
Other than being crazy. And I think that like, I mean, if it was, so the relationshipy part is like, if it was the neighbor slash possible father of the boy, then like it's because, he didn't want to pay child support for this like affair baby that he had, and that's why he did it. Other people, like some of their motivation from these like groups of brothers is like they were so mad and grossed out by the incest that they thought that the family should die. So
Yeah,
both of those
yeah.
things are like red flaggy, like that is the thing that like ultimately might have been the thing, but it also might have been just fucking a guy who found their house and wanted to kill them, which is, I think, the most fun slash scariest answer.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any movies on this? Did you see any media portrayals?
There are some movies that I didn't watch. I think there's one that got bad reviews, but it's like a horror movie of someone who like went there, but it's like not about the murders. It's about like someone going there to investigate the murders. Anyways, it doesn't look as good. But that episode of Lore is on Amazon Prime, and it's about an hour long, and it's pretty good. They go through like they kind of like layer on top the different scenarios of what they think might have happened. So like the different people that they think it might be, and they show them each doing it, being like, oh, maybe it was like the husband coming back from the war, and he saw the family was upset, or maybe it was the neighbor or whatever. So it mentions the stranger, but it doesn't like do that. But it does look good. Okay, just watch it anyway. But the beginning of it does show like the mailman coming and being like, huh, like kind of looking around, and they have like the murderer. You only see like his bottom half, but he's like holding the axe behind the door, and the mailman's like knocking on it, which is fun because that's really fucking scary
Jeez.
for that mailman.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a crazy. There should be some compilation of all these deaths that are incredibly mysterious. Like I do remember that cabin death. I'm gonna research that and like I'll send you the information on it. But it was like the exact same story where it's like family was on these different cabins, all in the woods, all
Yeah.
together, and then like all of them died. And acts of death, nobody has any idea what happened to them. It's just like it's just like
That
chills.
happened
Like
remember that happened like in like the 80s, happened at a Girl Scout camp. There was like Girl Scout camp cabins, and the cabin that was furthest away, the girls all got murdered.
God, it's
I'm
so
going
creepy.
also I'm going to Girl Scout camp in a few weeks, so I will probably die of fright. I don't know why I brought that up because I'm about to go to Girl Scout camp. I don't
When
remember
I
any of
was
that thing.
flying across the Atlantic, I was just thinking about how you were referencing that Malaysian flight that just disintegrated over the air in
Oh,
our
I'm
last
sorry. I
episode.
know that has a documentary about it, and it's a fucking mystery. The documentary does not have any answers. It's real scary.
So I haven't watched that. I've read that the prevailing theory and suspicion is that the U.S. military accidentally shot out of the air when they were conducting some other exercises and
Yeah,
buried the lead, basically.
that's what I think too. After watching the
Yeah.
documentary, that's my vote.
Oh, is that what the documentary says?
It's one of the options, and it seems very like more. It seems more likely than the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Freaky story. If you hear a creak in your house, there's probably someone living in your house that you're unaware
Most
of.
likely, it's a 9 out of 10 chance. So lucky toys.
Or if you hear the girl from the ring screaming, it's probably a fox howling.
Oh my God.
Facts that you just only
Um,
can get on this show.
well, thanks for listening.
Yeah, so I will transition us to the true crime side of our story. And knowing you, Taylor, you're going to know what I'm talking about here. The drink that I referenced earlier, Sambuca poured into a pint glass with Guinness poured
Mhm.
after it so that the Sambuca floats, that is referred to as a freak show.
Freak show.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
why. I couldn't understand why that was the name that they gave to it, but that's what it's technically called. So
Okay.
that's what we're going to be discussing. It's a real drink, and a freak show was a real thing of the past that is a critical part and a critical component of what we're going to be discussing.
Okay.
So I personally don't love the term freak show because what we basically did as a society back in the day when these things were prominent was we just took people who were different from us and labeled them as freaks and then charged 2 bits a gander to stare at them at a human zoo, which doesn't seem
Yeah,
very nice.
it's not very nice. That's good. Good
Yeah,
conclusion.
yeah. And I found the earliest version of a freak show. It was in the 1600s, and that's where the concept of a freak show started because back then, the King of England somehow stumbled across these twins in Genoa, Italy, who were conjoined twins. So one of them was an, I hate to even use the word normal, but you know what I mean, like
Hmm.
a regular dude. And then he had a conjoined twin that was like basically just like a head and part of a shoulder that was
Hmm.
coming out of his chest. It was called the normal one, quote unquote, normal one was called Lazarus. The other one was called John. And the brother
I don't know why
John,
that's funny. I just had to laugh about that.
I know. But like, I kind of love this story, okay? And I'll explain why. So John was the parasitic brother. So it really wasn't even like a fully functional human being. It was just like grunt, and that was basically all it could really do. And like maybe blink its eyes every now and then. And it basically
Wow.
just like dangled off of Lazarus for the most part. Apparently, at one point, this is the part that's amazing about the story. Lazarus was actually sentenced to death because he killed someone. And he got off, this argument actually worked. He got off by saying, if you kill me, then you kill my parasitic brother, and he didn't do anything.
Oh my God. Wait, could he talk? Wait,
He
no.
couldn't
You said he
talk.
just like grunted.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, kudos to this guy Lazarus for making lemonade out of lemons. But like, that was a pretty good argument to make. So more power to him.
Yeah.
Most of what freak shows consisted of was just people showing, the disabilities that they have, and sometimes people would do other stuff too. For example, there would be people who were ambiguously raced, and they would call them some unknown subspecies of humans. Or
Yeah.
if there was somebody who was heavily tattooed or heavily pierced, they'd also get a spot on the freak show. But occasionally, you'd have people with legitimate talent. So you'd have people who would eat flames or swallow swords. The guy who would do like nails in his nose and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you obviously have the folks that have congenital defects, like they have deformities that are not what people are used to seeing, and they also would join freak shows, which is a shitty thing to do to people. Sometimes it's okay. I'm actually going to state when I actually thought it was a good thing, but for the most part, it was kind of like not a great thing to do to somebody. I wrote here that it's actually kind of funny how some of this stuff still persists to this day. So, for example, there's a chain of grocery stores in Texas, and it might be elsewhere. I haven't seen it anywhere else. In California, they're known as Randall's, but in Texas, they're known as Tom Thumb. Have you heard of them
Hmm.
before?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's probably a Texas thing. They're named after a guy who was named General Tom Thumb, who stopped growing at 6 months old. So in total, he was 2 feet tall and weighed 15 pounds. And like, not even joking, I am one block in one. I'm at my parents' house right now for listeners. I'm one block from one Tom Thumb and then another block from another one behind me. So like, this is like a very pervasive name that caught on, all because of this one guy, General Tom Thumb. Another, and that was a P.T. Barnum act. Another famous act was one that involved a guy named Joseph Merrick. Do you remember that name?
No.
So you might remember his alternate name, which was the mean name that I don't love for him, which was the Elephant Man.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Wait, I'm sorry. I have to go back because Tom, that's not the first time that someone used the name Tom Thumb.
That is, I mean, well, I don't know.
Tom Thumb is a
Wasn't it?
character from English folklore.
No
Um,
way.
Tom Thumb, it said, I'm reading Wikipedia. Tom Thumb may have been a real person born in 1519. I was thinking that it was Christian Andersen, but that's Thumbelina. But like Tom Thumb is yeah, it's definitely from further back than that. It's like, but it's I think it makes sense that it's the name for a ridiculously small person. Continue.
No. You know what? I might have besmirched Tom Thumb because I just assumed it was named after him because I didn't know there was any other Tom Thumb that ever existed.
Yeah, it's like a Thumbelina kind of character, I think.
Okay, everybody just discount everything I said there, but trust everything that I say going forward. Okay?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, Joseph Merrick. So he was known as the colloquial name for him was the Elephant Man. He
Hmm.
suffered from a disease called Proteus syndrome, which results in basically just overgrowth of tissue that would lead to just traumatic disfigurement. Like his skeleton is on display in some museum in the UK, and you can tell this guy had it really, really rough. Like it's just overgrowth of tissue everywhere that it shouldn't be, and as a result, he was obviously heavily, heavily disfigured. He was displayed in London when it was, yeah, he was basically displayed in London for a period of time. This is the part where I think that General Tom Thumb and Joseph Merrick kind of break the mold of like how I think it's mean to do this to people. The reason was that these guys had no options, right?
Hmm.
So by all accounts, Tom Thumb was being paid $150 a week by P.T. Barnum, and at that time he basically retired young and super super rich. Joseph, on the other
Yeah.
hand, he was treated like a complete leper in society, and he had zero income or healthcare opportunities. So this guy who ran this freak show, like I know that's not a good thing to do to someone, but like what else was he gonna do? Like this was his
Yeah.
only way
No,
to support
totally.
himself. And on top of that,
Wait a
because it
minute.
was what?
I have so many. I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt you right now. There was a 80s movie called The Elephant Man, directed by David Lynch, starring Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yeah. And
It's
in fact,
awesome.
like there was so I think it was Bradley Cooper. Can you fact check me? I think it was Bradley Cooper
Yeah.
played Joseph Merrick on Broadway, actually. Like
Wait,
fairly
hold on.
recently, in the past like 5 to 7 years, I want to say.
No way. Huh. And they didn't do anything to his body. He just made a weird face.
Yeah. It was Bradley Cooper,
That's
right?
weird. Yeah. He's just like
Yeah.
moving his face to the side. Like, and did you watch The Witcher? In
Oh
the,
yeah.
in The Witcher, how she like has that hump for the first half of it?
Yeah, oh
Like
yeah.
it goes up.
Yeah. Also, anybody who likes the Witcher show, you got to get Witcher 3 on PlayStation or Xbox. It is incredible.
It's so good. I mean, I don't know
So,
about PlayStation, but The Witcher show is great.
but well, so my other point was that because Joseph was, Alpha Joseph, whatever you want to call him, because he was such a popular act, a lot of doctors would come and see him, and they were like trying to figure out like what's going on with this guy. It was I didn't write this down, but I think it was in 1996 when they finally discovered that he had this illness, and that's what it actually was. So like there was no help for him
Hmm.
essentially, but
Yeah, yeah.
it is what it is. Like in the grand scheme of things, it was probably better that he was in this situation than just like homeless in the UK,
Or
right?
like murdered as a baby. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. So we start at this point getting into the early 1900s, and medical science start becoming a thing, and the world starts falling out of love with freak shows. It started being viewed as basically distasteful, thank God. laws actually started being passed in some places saying that you can't exhibit someone and charge money to view them because of physical deformity, disease, or general mutation.
That's
What that also meant is in the latter 1900s, freak shows weren't really a lucrative endeavor. Before, if you had a genetic mutation or disease, you could live a reasonably comfortable life despite it. You felt like shit because people are gawking at you, but it's better than not having any source of income at all, like I mentioned with the Elephant Man.
mm-hmm.
So it was during this time period of the transition from freak shows being like a good thing,
I get it. Yeah.
yeah, that basically our main character in the story rose to prominence, and his name is Grady Stiles, which I'm
Okay.
sure you know.
I don't know yet. That was a really long introduction, and I'm really excited. And also, I cannot wait to share with people these pictures of Bradley Cooper because he's
So
just making a face.
I saw, you know what? I saw him do it, like do his transformation into the Elephant Man, and I thought it was pretty good. He like you can watch clips of him doing it on like talk shows and stuff, and I was like, okay, like for
Maybe it's
looking the way
better, but
you do,
he's just like holding one shoulder up higher and making like a kissy face. Like he's not.
yeah,
There's like no attempt to make him look like anything else. They just like Bradley Cooper making a weird face. Anyway,
because it's Bradley Cooper. You can't put him in disguise. It ruins the entire point of
it
hiring
looks
Bradley Cooper.
ridiculous. Like
All right,
I can't even. So I'm gonna stop looking at it because it's too much.
fair enough. Fair enough. So Grady's alternate name is the Lobster Boy.
Oh,
So
okay.
the reason I bring this up and the reason I gave that long intro is because I think that plays a part in what's going to end up happening here. Because you have a guy in Grady Stiles who is raised when being a freak is
Hmm.
a good thing or like a lucrative thing to do. And he catches the tail end of that. And
Yeah.
there's a steep decline in that. So back then, well, you know what? I'm digressing. I'll tell you the justification here in a moment. Again, starting off right off the bat, I'm going to say I don't love making fun of people with like situations like this guy has, but I will say in this case, not because Grady had a disability, but because he's a total rampaging, violent, drunk piece of shit. Uh, he got exactly what was coming to him, and his
Yeah.
disability had nothing to do with that. So I'm just going to preface all this. Grady was born with a condition known as acrodactyly, which is a genetic condition where the central digits of the hand and or the feet are missing. So
Okay.
basically, you end up in large part with some amalgamation of like a pinky and like a thumb, or a big
Got it.
toe and a pinky toe. Essentially that. It gives the appearance of a claw, basically. Like you only have these digits, and a lot of times they have other issues where like those digits are longer than they should be anyways. So it looks
Hmm.
even more off, essentially. Grady's case was particularly bad because he actually had it in both his hands and his feet. So he only had claws, like four digits, four claws on his appendages.
Got it.
The condition was actually pretty well documented in Grady's family history. So Grady's family had had this condition for generations, including Grady's dad, Grady Sr. Sr. came up in the freak show circuit back when this wasn't a disreputable thing to be a part of, and he leveraged his deformity to make a good living for the family. So by all accounts, he made like $70,000 to $80,000 a year doing this, which like that's really really good money in a
Yeah.
situation like this. Like because you think of like somebody working in a freak show, like you assume they live in like a tent, right? Like I mean, this is like he was able to actually support a family off the back of his disability. Grady's not going to be in that exact same position, but like that's what he was accustomed to, right?
Hmm.
Eventually, Grady's born, and then he goes on the road with Senior, and they perform together. Again, it's worth noting that despite everything I'm about to say about the kind of person that Grady grew up to be, this had to be shitty, right? Like, I mean, I think about like how most kids they want to fit in with other kids, and if you're
Hmm.
someone that is born like this, you're not just like called a freak, but then your dad monetizes your condition, and that can't be a good feeling. And so I'm
Yeah.
making a lot of excuses for this guy. His economic situation, the fact that he probably felt shitty about him, like I do think all of that plays a factor in what ends up happening or who he ends up becoming. That's all I'm saying.
Totally.
So yeah, because Grady had acrodactyly in his legs or his feet as well, he really only had two options for mobility. One was a wheelchair, but the most common way he would move around is you just use his upper body to just shuffle his legs forward and move that way.
Hmm.
As a result of that, he became incredibly strong in his upper body, like abnormally strong. Multiple reports would indicate how freakishly strong this guy ended up becoming. He's basically just doing a gymnast routine for 24 hours a day, all day long for his entire life.
Yeah.
So that helps
Yeah. Oh my
getting
God,
strong.
totally.
As Grady grew up, he got married. He had three kids. He with a woman named Mary who worked at the freak show too. She had no conditions. Like she was like just a staffer at the freak show that Grady was at. They fell in love. They ended up having kids. Only one of the kids ended up being born without acrodectally, a girl named Kathy. The other ones basically did what Grady's dad did to him. They joined Grady on the freak show at the freak show. It's
Is
so
it,
weird saying that word. It's just like it feels so gross.
is there another word for it? What,
No, that's what it was.
is there anything else that it does? Oh, I guess you could call it a sideshow
I guess you could
if
call it
you
a
want to.
sideshow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking
Um,
the popular culture of it, where like, I mean, there was an American Horror Story called Freak. Wait, was it called
yeah,
Freak
yeah.
Show?
It was, yeah. And there
Yeah,
is a lobster boy in it.
yeah.
Um, it definitely gets better at the first. It's weird. It's one of the iffy ones. But no, what was I gonna say? Oh, so there's nothing else besides the finger thing. Like, it doesn't like affect anything else. It's just that.
Just that. Yeah,
Okay,
psychologically, mentally, he was all sound.
got it.
Well,
I mean,
absent
sure.
the everything else.
Yeah.
So it's also worth noting here, in addition to everything else that's going on, Grady was also like a drunk, but like not in like a fun, good time kind of a way. His wife would later claim, after the events we're going to discuss here, that the only times that he wasn't drinking when he was awake was between 8 and 10 a.m. So he was like constantly drinking, essentially. He was
Hopefully, he was
aggressive.
like drinking water during that time.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, if you look at pictures of him, he looks like a picture of a guy who's been drinking nonstop. Like he looks rough. He looks like he's having a rough time. But he also paired that with a 3 pack a day cigarette habit, which also doesn't help
Oh God,
anything.
no, that
And
sounds terrible. He smelled terrible.
he probably smelled horrible. And neighbors in their small Florida town they lived in would regularly hear just belligerent screaming from their house as Grady would regularly get drunk and berate and abuse his family. He would physically beat the shit out of his wife and his kids with his hands. And like, well, his hands were like basically pinchers. He would like grab them
Yeah.
and choke them. And he was strong as shit. Like he would be able to throw them around like crazy. There's one story where that daughter I mentioned earlier, Kathy, she was pregnant and she tried to stop Grady from beating her mom, like got in the middle of it. And Grady ended up beating Kathy so bad that she ended up going into early labor like that moment. But he
Awful.
was he was a jerk. He was a really, really again, I kind of understand part of it given his background and all that, but like still he's a terrible person.
Yeah, no excuse to like beat the shit out of your family.
Right, right, exactly. So eventually, Mary grew tired of this treatment and she leaves Grady. She ends up marrying a new guy and she left the kids with him. So, like, not a good woman either, basically.
Yeah.
The eldest daughter, she was named Donna, and Donna wanted to basically extract herself from this living arrangement. So she agreed to marry this poor bastard named Jack Lane. Grady, as with most abusers, could feel the controlling grip he had on his family slipping away. First, his wife leaves him, marries another
Hmm.
man. Then the daughter wants to leave him as well. So he's lit. He's completely pissed at this point. And the day before the wedding, Grady asked Jack over to discuss something like the marriage. I don't know. The details are hazy again on this stuff. And it was during this meeting that Grady ends up shooting Jack in the back and killing
Oh
him.
my God,
Yeah.
that's his daughter's fiance?
Yeah, this is literally the night
Ugh.
before the marriage, the wedding. He does this. Grady
Oh
would
no.
obviously, yeah, he would obviously get arrested, and he put on a self defense claim, like because and people believed it because like you look at this guy and like dude, he's basically just like an upper torso, and like he just put on an act of like dude, I'm disabled, like I can't do this stuff, like this guy was gonna kill me, like he made that whole argument. He ended up being found guilty on third-degree murder charges, which like is better than first and second degree, but still pretty bad. But
Hmm.
because of his condition, you're like, what do we do with this guy? You can't put him in a
Right.
normal cell. Like people just throw him around like a volleyball. Like, and so they decided that we'll just release him on probation. We're gonna give him 15 years probation, and we're gonna release him. That was what the court decided to do for killing a guy, like a kid, basically. Like, absolutely.
Oh
This
my
is so
God.
Florida. This is the most Florida story I've ever heard. So,
I mean, there's a lot of Florida stories. Pretty
what do
good.
you, yeah, yeah. Apparently, for a brief period of time after all this happened, Grady goes on the straight and narrow. He quits drinking and just like tries to be a more sensible, reasonable human being. During this time, Mary decides to leave her husband and not only gets back with Grady, they remarry. It's
Ew.
crazy. Well, like you should never do that. You should never. It's like calling. It's like drunk calling or texting your ex. Like just don't do it. Definitely don't remarry them.
Yeah.
Not a good move. So obviously, the whole not drinking thing doesn't last very long, and he starts beating the shit out of her again, getting drunk. Because of course he does. Like you're not gonna change this
Yeah.
guy. By this point, Mary had apparently had enough and decided to do something about Grady. Mary had a son with the guy she left Grady for originally. The son's name is Henry Glenn Newman, and oh, I wrote it here. I forgot. So Mary loved Carney guys. So the guy she left Grady for was called the Midget Man. So he was a little person,
Good for her.
and yeah, and they ended up having a child together, and that child was named Harry Glenn Newman Jr. Mary ends up asking Harry Jr. to take care of Grady after sustaining tremendous abuse, and Harry did so by offering $1,500 to another freak show worker named Chris Wyant to kill Grady. And Chris, no qualms. Again, this goes back to my story where I'm like, how do these people just find each other? Like it's just like they're like magnets. They come together. It's so wild to me. He just asks the first guy
Um,
he meets, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it for $1,500."
one always was laughing. One time we were talking about the people in Florida, and you're like, this guy's just tripping over scumbags.
That's true. That's so true. I don't get how they come together. It's just like they're, yeah. I mean, good for them. They have a network. They have more of a network for that than I do. So kudos.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you
Chris,
do. Good for you.
yes, of course, of course. Chris obviously agrees to this and immediately just goes over to the trailer that Grady's in. He looks in the window, sees Grady's just like shithouse drunk, watching television. He opens the door, goes inside, point blank shoots him in the head and kills him.
So
So,
this is the son of Grady's wife that she had during the time that she was married to someone else.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, no.
Easy.
So Chris is the friend of that
Oh, it's not even the
son.
son. It's the
It's not
friend
even the
of the son.
son. Exactly.
So Chris is just like looking to kill someone. Just somebody just asked me.
Somebody's asked me. Anybody who wants me to do it, like this, dude. They're all living in like a commune, right? Like, these are all freak show staffers and actors and whatever. Like they're all like together, and so I don't know. I guess easy going over there, but
There's like, do you ever watch Bones?
no.
Probably not. There's just like, so whatever, they're like investigating things, and like the whole thing is like the woman Bones is really smart, and then like the man is David Boreanaz or whatever from Buffy, and
Yeah,
he
Angel.
he's like, yeah, exactly. He's like the cop, and she's like the like really smart scientist. But for some reason that makes absolutely no sense, they have to solve a case at the circus, so they become circus performers to go solve the case, and you're like, why would anyone ever ask you to do that? It's just really funny, and
It's,
but they like live in their little trailer and like learn how to like juggle, or it's really stupid, but funny.
that's
But
so
yes, but I know
funny.
exactly. But I can picture like a circus, traveling circus, like right now. I know everyone knows what that
Yeah.
means.
You know
Yeah.
what's funny is this entire time while I was researching this, I was only thinking about that American Horror Story season, which like I couldn't get through because I actually didn't think it was that good at all.
I think it gets
And
better
it gets
later.
better. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it's not my
That,
favorite, but I think that the ending is pretty good.
that was one of the only ones I could think of American Horror Stories. So I quit halfway through. But I mean, yeah, could
Did
be.
you ever watch Freaks from like the 20s or whatever?
No, no. And you know what's funny is oh, of course it wouldn't be. Yeah, because I kept trying to, as I was researching the whole freak show thing, I was like, what was that movie where they go, one of us,
That's
I
it.
guess it
Yeah,
was called Freaks, right? Okay.
that's Freaks. Yeah, it's from 1932.
Yeah, yeah. That would not have helped the situation of these shows and these performers, I don't think. But going back to the story, so obviously we're not dealing with like the smartest people in the world here. Chris, Harry Jr., and Mary were basically immediately suspected of the murder and caught for it. Harry initially was being questioned by police on this murder, he volunteered a polygraph, which he obviously failed, and then broke down crying and told the police everything, including his mother, including his friend Chris, all of it. Like he just brought everybody into this situation with him.
What?
Chris, the guy, the actual gunman himself, he was charged with second-degree murder, and he got 27 years in prison. Amazingly, Chris was released in 2009, so this guy's out and about walking around right now.
That's so crazy because the story starts in like a time that feels completely different than
Dude,
ours.
that's nuts, doesn't it? Like you're talking
Yeah.
about like a trailer in the bogs in Everglades of Florida where they're constructing tents to display humans with congenital defects.
Right.
And this guy would still be actually he was born in 37. Would he still be alive? Maybe. He could be still alive, right?
It could definitely be alive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, the kids are definitely still around. I mean, I saw pictures of his kids. Like, they're still around. They're kicking and doing their own thing. Same with
Yeah.
Mary, actually. So Mary was found guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and she only got 12 years. Like, it's absolutely for killing somebody. I mean, granted, she played up the fact there was a lot of domestic violence and abuse, which I guess worked for Grady when he went to court and was like, I have this issue. You should go light on me. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's an argument to be made, but she only ended up serving 7 years for this. She got out in 2000. So, and
Wow.
she also moved right back to the city where her and Grady used to live. And nobody seems to care. I'll discuss that here in a moment, too. The guy who got it the worst is actually her son, Harry Jr. So he got charged with first-degree murder, and he got sentenced to life. And he did it because he died in prison in 2014. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. It's I pointed out this fact that like nobody went to Grady's funeral. They said there was like
Yeah.
maybe 10 people that showed up. There was something that like they kept trying to figure out like who could actually be the pallbearer to carry his casket, and nobody would volunteer to do it because everybody hated this guy. So we always talk about like
Like that's
don't
come up
kill your
before
family.
in your, yeah, it's come up before. I just feel like we should not have pallbearers. We should move past that as a society.
I mean, what's the yeah, I guess yeah. Just what would you do?
I just don't feel like you should do that. I feel like it's a lot of responsibility and no.
Yeah, I've been a pallbearer before. It's not
Have
fun.
you?
It's not a good experience.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That sounds terrible.
yeah. It feels weird. It feels really weird. Like
No.
there's like corpse on my shoulder. It's like ugh. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna vote no on pallbearers.
Yeah, yeah. Don't volunteer, especially if you hate the guy.
Yeah.
Which like in this case, like everybody did. I was gonna say like we always talk about like don't kill your family, but it seems like this guy really had it coming. Like it feels
Yeah,
like
like
this was the
sometimes it's
one.
okay to kill your family.
But like at least like get away with it. Like don't do it in a way that your son goes to jail for the rest of his life and dies there. Like there's a better way to do this, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's his story, and like I made some excuses at the top of like look the economic decline, the fact that you're treated the way you're treated in society by your own family, by your peers. Like it's you gotta I don't know. Maybe it would do that. Maybe this is who you turn into under any circumstance. I don't know, but it's not a good way to live. I wouldn't love that for anybody I know. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, especially that being that transition time where you're like, this could have been a job, and then like it's not anymore, which is the
dude.
correct answer. But
But like,
also like don't, but then people, what are people supposed to do?
how much I'm doing the math right now. In the 1930s. Okay, so his dad made about $70,000. Oh no, you know what? That was already transferred. Never mind. That's it. So it would have
Well,
been 70 to 80,000 dollars in today's money is what it would have come out to.
that sounds great.
Yeah, like you're living in like the
Florida.
Everglades. Like yeah,
Yeah.
you're like the richest guy within like 70 counties of you. So yeah, and yeah, it's got to suck to not have that anymore, not have that opportunity. Like that's why with the Joseph Merrick thing, I was like, well, is it a bad thing that they did this to him? Like, I don't know.
I know. And like P.T. Barnum obviously like is bad in retrospect.
I
You
don't know.
know.
He made Tom Thumb super rich. Like he gave him like a super like
Right. But he also did like tons of like super racist and like weird things also that I don't know the details of. But I know that he's like not as exciting as Hugh Jackman. But but yeah, also like, Tom Thumb got a job.
yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, okay, so P.T. Barnum, I think, was the guy who would put people of different races up and call them a new species of human. I think that
Yeah.
was the guy that did that. And there's another thing I didn't write down here, which she did, which was like also kind of fucked up. So he found this 80-year-old blind woman who was a former slave and put her in a freak show, his show, saying that
Hmm.
she was the oldest woman on earth at 160 years old. She had other issues too. I forgot what it was. Like she was missing like a leg and she was blind or like something. It was something. She was obviously in a very bad way, and he capitalized on it, which again like isn't nice, but like I don't know. Maybe that was a way for her to make a living. I don't know. I mean, I'm so conflicted on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, like we're not gonna do it anymore,
No, we
hopefully.
we should not do it anymore.
But I mean, I'm sure there's places in the world where they do that still. Don't
Yeah,
you think there has to be? Yeah.
yeah. There's got. I mean, yeah. There's definitely parts of the world that do stuff like this still to this day. Like, I mean, think of how some of these countries treat people who are like just gay. like, like
Yes. No, totally. Yeah. Think
imagine
about
like
how we do. Yeah.
yeah, precisely. So, yeah, this Taylor. This was the story that I was referencing when I was researching that guy Ken Rex, whatever that guy was who got killed in Skidmore, Missouri. And I was like, what? And I asked ChatGPT, when is it okay to kill somebody?
Oh, right, right, right.
so, so ChatGPT obviously didn't reply to me, but doing research, I was like, justifiably, the universe seems aligned on two murders, and it's that guy, the Ken guy, and then this guy, which is like all
Yeah.
across the board. It was like these were the two people that had it coming the most. So yeah, that's the story.
Thank you. That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Going a little further back in time than usual, I guess. I mean, this guy was born
I
in the
know.
1930s, but I kind of like that.
I like it.
So
I'm gonna go further back next week. Even farther, further, 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 further. I gotta get back in the ancient times-ish, you know.
your story, I literally, while you were talking, I typed out like what my next story is going to be because you gave me the best reminder of one of the freakiest things I've ever read about. It's not the cabin
Mm.
thing that we discussed earlier. It's another one that happened like very recently, like in the early 2000s, I would say. I can't remember
Ooh.
exactly, but it was, I remember reading about this. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot about this case. And yeah, that's gonna be next week.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Well, that is our tale. Is there anything, Taylor, you wanna sign off with?
I definitely want to ask everyone to please, if you're listening, please share it with people. Just like our posts on Instagram, share them in your stories. It can really help people find us. I'm like slowly adding people to my LinkedIn, and I feel like I'm posting it all the time. But then I also get people who are like, "Oh, I just heard of this," and I'm like, "Okay." So like the algorithm isn't just me. I need to we need to move it along and share it. So please share if you can. We're at Doomed to Fail Pod, in every place imaginable on Instagram. And you can also just if someone's asking you the best way to find a podcast, you can just literally just put Doomed to Fail into Spotify or Apple Podcasts on your phone and find us there. So
And I
please,
also, yeah,
yeah.
I also want to shout you out, Taylor, because the graphics you're creating are probably the coolest graphics of any podcast I've ever seen.
Farz, I'm so freaking excited to, after you stop recording, to show you what I just made for this episode. So
Oh, they're
get
so
ready.
cool. They're so you did JFK drinking orange juice for our OJ
I'm
and Kennedy.
obsessed with it.
It's
Yes.
so
Thank
good.
you. I really like it. I'm like, this is really good, you guys.
And I don't think anybody else is doing it. I don't see anybody else doing stuff like that. Like it's a really cool mashup of our two stories coming together. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
So
it's very fun. Mid-journey is the most fun I've ever had.
awesome.
So
Awesome.
cool.
Well, thank you, Taylor. I'm
Thanks.
going to go ahead and kill the recording, and we are off.